I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Texas Congressman Wesley Hunt is facing criticism from GOP leaders for missing dozens of House votes.
Sir, why haven't you been at votes?
Y'all be safe.
Speaker Mike Johnson expressed frustration after Hunt skipped a key ICE funding vote while campaigning for Senate in Texas, where he's currently trailing in the race. Los Angeles Black Mayor Karen Bass will deliver 2 State of the City speeches this year. The first, on February 2nd, will highlight preparations for the 2026 World Cup at Inglewood SoFi Stadium. A second, more traditional address is planned for mid-April and will focus on the city budget. And R&B singer Summer Walker is heading back on tour. The Grammy-nominated artist announced her Still Finally Over It trilogy tour, celebrating her last 3 albums. The tour kicks off in Toronto in May and wraps up in London in August. Tickets go on sale to the public January 29th. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit PCADevZone.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers and Clippers generated a playoff atmosphere last night for a sellout crowd at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. After blowing a 22-point lead in the third quarter and a 14-point lead in the fourth, the Clippers kept their composure and held on for a 112-104 win. The Clippers are 14-3 since December 20th, the best record in the NBA during this 4-week stretch. After a 6-21 start, the Clippers are now 20-24, a game ahead of Memphis for the 10th and final playoff spot in the Western Conference. Kawhi Leonard, who missed the previous 3 games with a sore left knee, led the Clippers with 24 points. Luka Doncic had a game-high 32. LeBron finished with 23 points and 6 assists. This run the Clippers are on is something special. Last night's outcome made it official. There are now 2 NBA teams in LA to get excited about this season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Tavish Smiley. You may have heard me talk about the new course I'm teaching, The Art of Conversation. Well, it's here, and I'm holding a live free preview session on January 26th at 6 p.m. Pacific. Here's why this matters. For almost 40 years, I've made my living having conversations that count. Presidents, activists, artists, people who've changed the world. And I've learned something in the process. Most folk have no idea how to ask a real question, how to listen, how to create a moment. Whether you're building a business, leading a team, hosting a podcast, or just want to connect better, this changes how you show up. It's free, it's live, and I might have a surprise guest joining us. Here's what you do. Go to TavishTalks.com. That's TavishTalks.com. Scan the QR code, click the registration link, and you're in. It's January 26th, 6 p.m. Pacific. I'm keeping this intimate. Don't miss it. I'll see you in class.
Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA. Talk 1580. Download the app.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. And welcome to Fat Meat Fridays and the J Lunch Club. Our very special guest, along with our regular contributor Gina Towns, is Dr. Ted Williams III, an educator, actor, author who teaches political science at the City Colleges of Chicago. He's a graduate of the University of Chicago, Rutgers University, and Northern Seminary. His acting credits include NBC's Chicago PD, Showtime's The Chi, various films, plays, and commercials for companies including Empire Carpet, Cheerios, and Subway. Williams is the former host of WYCC PBS Television's The Professors, author of the book The Way Out, Christianity, Politics, and the Future of the African American Community, and creator of the musical theater production 1619, The Journey of a People, For the Chicago City Council, he currently serves on the Illinois Reparations Commission. He and his wife, Rosalind, have 3 children. Dr. Ted Williams, welcome forward on Fat Meat Fridays to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and with our creator, Gina Towns.
Hi, Ted.
I think Ted's has to be unmuted.
I'm so sorry. It is so good to be with you guys again for the second time this week. I apologize. Trying to get things together here, but it's good to see y'all again this week. And happy MLK week /month /year.
Ted, thank you so much for contributing with us most recently Monday, where we were invited as the keynote speaker of their annual Martin Luther King Jr. commemorative event. More than 650 people were present, and at the conclusion of the program, Dr. Williams joined me here live on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We went upstairs, found us some good Wi-Fi, and were able to call into the show. Dr. Williams, before we get to a number of contemporary issues that are confronting the country in this first segment, share with us your thoughts about the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. on January 15th, 2026.
Dr. King is probably the most significant American with respect to the issue of freedom and equality and justice for all people. Without Dr. King, the promises of America are really not true for all people. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their creators with certain inalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If Dr. King does not live and does not do the work he does, along with myriad other significant civil rights leaders, including your father, we recognize that America is not America, as Langston Hughes so eloquently said. And so Dr. King and the civil rights struggle, the country ought to be thanking us and the leaders of this and Dr. King and people that worked with him for that, because it has truly made America live up to what it said on paper. And I can tell you that immigrants who come from across the world see what happened for our people in the 60s and the 50s, and they have hope for America. And without that, I will tell you, it'd be a much different place. And if we cannot extend this promise to all people, then the country has no real future. And
Ted, when I think, and I didn't mean to cut you off, that was an accident, I promise you. But when I think about, with hindsight, the fact that we rely upon the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. in just about every single protest within the context of our democracy, even to this day, that had, to your point, not existed, and we think about the leaders that did exist during the period, from Malcolm to Stokely to other students who were rising up, their frame of reference for us in 2026 would not be the same frame of reference if King simply had never existed. To your point, his contribution just that extraordinary.
Absolutely, my brother. Right before I came on with you all, I was watching a documentary on Colin Kaepernick and the story of his protest just now 10 years ago. He first took that knee in that 2016 football season. And to watch the reaction to his efforts and other NFL players' efforts to bring light to the issue of social justice and police brutality, it reminds me of what Dr. King lived for, what he fought for, and what he ultimately died for. And I think the greatest thing that we can do in recognizing his legacy, my brother, and I know you know this very well, is to live it today. We still have such a long way to go when we have people who, as I watch this brother get treated as if he was not an American citizen, and to see the history of sports protests, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf in the NBA, who lost his job and his home for protests, and Muhammad Ali and the way that they treated him, it just illuminates the need for each one of us to continue fighting, because we still have such a long way to go.
Gina, we have about a minute before we come forward.
when we come forward, certainly I want to take a deeper dive into what made Dr. King tick. Because like us, we're studying what he said, how he said it, why he said it, and the time in which he said it. But he studied some people too, and he came to some conclusions that he was able to share with us. And in that way, history was always flying. It's kind of like when he said in the speech, I wish that I could have lived here. That would have been great in this time period. I could have lived here, but I am happy that I'm right here in this period. And so as we reach back for him, I have some things that I want to take some comparisons on, and we'll come forward and we will get right back to Dr. King.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 in just a moment.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, KBLA delegation, you know what's better than laughing? Laughing while celebrating the legends who made us laugh in the first place. KBLA Talk 1580 is proud to present our annual Black History Month luncheon. And this year, we're honoring comedy greats, trailblazers who broke barriers, and funny bones at the same time.
You had to grow up early when we was growing up because your parents would send you to the store to buy. You was too young to buy. I want you to go to the store, give me a fifth of gin and a pack of cigarettes. Mama, I'm two. They ain't gonna let me have that. Here, take this note. You be a little boy walking down the street with liquor and cigarettes, and your neighbors be going, that's a good little boy right there.
We need a little levity right about now. So we're rolling out the red carpet for comedy royalty. D.L. Hughley, Melanie Camacho, Earthquake, Lunel, Dion Cole, Martin Lawrence, and a surprise guest appearance. It's going up Thursday, February 26th in downtown LA at the Grammy Museum. An unforgettable afternoon of stories, celebration, and yes, plenty of laughs. Because let's be real, these legends don't just tell jokes. They have changed the game, opened doors, and made history while making us smile.
You gotta go to child support court. You gotta get there real early in the morning. You see brothers going in the court. You see them come out 3 hours later. I can't pay this. Let me talk to you, baby. Please, let me talk to the witness, Sean. Let me talk to the witness. Brother be working for 3 weeks, get his check is $43.
This year, for the first time ever, we have set aside a limited number of individual tickets for the luncheon. They are going to go fast, and when they're gone, they're gone. So if you want a single ticket, or if your company or organization wants to sponsor a table, move swiftly and get to KBLA1580.com right now. All these comedy giants in one room on one stage at the same time? Stop it! This event is going to sell out quicker than right now and sooner than at once. KBLA Talk 1580's annual Black History Month luncheon, Thursday, February 26th at the Grammy Museum. It's gonna be legendary, just like them.
What's up? What's up?
What's up? You got to laugh the pain away.
Are you drowning in IRS tax debt? Angela was. She called Civic Tax Relief and saved over $80,000. Felicia was having health problems, got behind on her taxes, interest and penalties were adding up. She called Civic Tax Relief and saved over $15,000. Civic Tax Relief is a professional tax negotiation firm that can protect you from the IRS. If you're getting collection letters, call Civic Tax Relief for a free consultation. They will go to work helping you discover all the relief programs you may qualify for free. James owed the IRS $37,000. Civic Tax Relief represented him against the IRS, and by the time everything was completed, he did not owe the IRS anything. If you are in trouble with the IRS, call Civic Tax Relief for your free consultation now. 800-200-2257. 800-200-2257. Get a free consultation and real tax relief. Call 800-200-2257. 800-200-2257.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Folly drops the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download the app.
Hey, you're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. If you're on the Golden State, the Santa Ana, the Santa Monica, the San Bernardino, the San Diego, the Harbor, the Century, Foothill, as well as the San Gabriel River and Long Beach Freeway, right here on KBLA Talk 1580. This is Fat Meat Fridays with Gina Towns and our very special guest, Dr. Ted Williams III. Gina,
Hi, Jesse.
we here. We are here. Ted, we are here, my brother. It is the end of the week. And Friday. Ted, Gina wanted to go, I think, a little bit deeper into some of the ideas and the motivators from Dr. King Jr. just before the break. She said she wanted to know what made Dr. King tick.
Yeah, so I think a lot about who influenced him. We understand that no one, and that all of us come from somewhere, that we are all influenced by various people. And being a student of Dr. King, as so many of us are, I think about Henry David Thoreau, and I think about his 1848 essay on the duty of civil disobedience. And I think about how in this writes about his actions to refuse paying taxes and to be jailed rather than support a war that would expand slavery into Mexico. And Dr. King being, as a college student, so inspired by seeing the idea that you could take whatever you were engaged in, rather than using the weapons of war, use the weapons of peace and resistance and make statements. And I will flip that back around to what I was saying before the break. I am so inspired when I see those things, that tradition of civil disobedience continuing, thinking about some of the protests that have happened in the NFL and the NBA and other places like that. It inspires me because it shows us that as Dr. King took Thoreau's words and his life and his experience and his example, we today in 2026 can take Dr. King's experience, life, and example and apply that in every place and space that we find ourselves, in academia, in the sports world, in the media, and resist through civil disobedience issues that we find morally reprehensible. Police brutality, inequality, blatant racism, the takeover, the American imperialism to take over foreign governments. And I think that in closing on this, the way that we really live out Dr. King's legacy is that we find places and spaces today to enact our own forms of civil disobedience.
Gina, your thoughts on what made Dr. King tick?
Well, certainly. I have a couple of slides that I want to put up for those who can see, but we'll certainly have a discussion around them. When King came to the March on Washington, I think he really had contemplated the presidency and the evolution of Abraham Lincoln. And he came to cash a check, if you will, on the promise that America had delivered. And so when you think about, he says, in a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check with the architects of our republic who wrote these magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. They were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. And sometimes we forget, when people say, in our community in particular, well, that it wasn't written for us. Well, there was an amendment that was added. And in fact, there were 3 amendments that were added as a result of the evolution and the resolve that President Lincoln had. And so that's what we have to hold on. That's the check that he went to cash to remind us as a people that we are part of this. And so here, I've been kind of channeling all throughout the month of January what happened on this day in African American history, because it's not just a month for us. In February, it is people who have ascended. In January 20th, we looked at the importance of that date earlier in the week, Ted. That is Barack Obama is inaugurated as president. Kamala Harris is inaugurated as the vice president. And certainly there are a lot of other things. But as we go through all of these, the contribution of Black people and the progress, here we have Daniel Hale Williams here at Providence Hospital in Chicago, 1893, and then Susan Rice in 2009. And that was the reason I said earlier that it seems like about every 60 or 100 years, we have to revisit our freedom. We have to remind ourselves, and 2 generations, 3 generations later, that, perhaps this is not the end of our struggle, but we have ancestors that we can reach back to.
When I think about in this moment, Dr. King, Gina, and Ted, I envision a man in a very, very crowded space. And he lifts up his arms with very pointed elbows. And very gingerly, he begins swinging to create some space for himself, some space. While the analogy itself is imperfect, what Dr. King has done in our consciousness is he has created a space for action for us, a space that did not exist, a train of thinking linearly that allows us to fight in every generation in a spirit of love, in a spirit of nonviolence, a way of overcoming whatever the particular evils are. And he referred to himself as maladjusted. He didn't see himself in any other negative term, but maladjusted. There are people who had adjusted to the status quo. They had gotten used to it. They had gotten silent. They were comfortable with the way things were. They didn't want to be an agitator. They didn't want to be a fly in the middle of someone's milk. But Dr. King expanded that space for us. So we know how to react to George Floyd. We know how to react to the kidnapping of Maduro. We know, and we have liberty in the space to condemn what took place to Renee Good in Minneapolis. That space that we function in isn't reactionary, that like the young man who took his rifle to Minnesota determining that he was going to defend property at a very young age and was subsequently set free by the justice system. It seems to me that the space that we operate in is a space that matters to my sense of morality, my sense of Christianity. It is a space that matters to Buddhism. It is a space that matters to Judaism. It is a space that matters to Islam. It is a space that we did not have access to until Dr. King raised his elbows and said, listen, we don't have to be conformist. We can fight. We can fight the power, but this is how we're going to fight the power, and we're going to do it with our heads high and with a level of profound dignity. Dr. Williams?
Yes, I really, as you're talking about, you're referring to Kyle Rittenhouse, and I'm just thinking about that because I'll tell you guys this. I was in, actually, here's a funny story. After we spent our time together on Monday, and we did a radio show after your keynote, I stayed in the area for a little while and went to a mall and connected in sort of the suburban, northern suburban Chicago, and was walking through the mall and saw a store where in the front of the window of the store were T-shirts that said, God is good and heaven is great and you should live in principles of godliness and things like that. And then I saw behind that a huge wall-sized American flag. I saw a display of guns and ammo, and I saw a display with Charlie Kirk quotes. And it made me think about how this conflation of white nationalism, this American patriotism identity with theology and the violence that is so represented by the Second Amendment is really what Dr. King was fighting against in the 1950s and 60s. And that strand still exists today. As we were talking about the significant dates from January, the one date I thought about that we did not talk about potentially was January 6th, which might be as significant in this conversation about our rights because of what we still are fighting against and how we have to be vigilant in this space and in this way. And so in so many ways, as you talk about, Dr. King carved out this space for himself, and he made sure that the country understood where we needed to go. After, maybe we'll come back around to this, I've got a few thoughts about the I Have a Dream speech directly and some quotes that I wanted to pull. But I think that for me, it reminded me that we cannot rest. It reminded me that we must stay vigilant. It reminded me of the things that you are talking about and how the work still needs to be done, because we still have a world in which militarism, materialism, and racism reign very heavily.
Gina, I thought your slide with Daniel Hale Williams, the first African American to perform, or first American, maybe the first person in the world to perform open heart surgery right here at Provident Hospital here in the city of Chicago. And then in that intervening space is Martin Luther King Jr., of course. And then, of course, Susan Rice and the opportunities that she and Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice and Eric Holder and obviously Barack Obama, the space that they could operate in would forever never be seen as a space that wasn't appealing to all. They weren't just, if you will, leaders on our side of town, Gina. They were leaders who emerged in their own rights to global significance because of the roles in which they played and the presidents that they had the opportunity and the people, of course, to serve.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thinking about what Ted was saying, I began to wonder, is this the ongoing fight between good and evil? In our last segment, Niku just said, very plainly, and we've had lots of guests who have called what is going on right now evil. And I went back to the I Have a Dream speech, and for those who cannot see, there is on our screen, if you get a chance to download the podcast, you will see Lincoln at the Lincoln Memorial sitting in his chair and overlooking the mall, and Dr. King giving his I Have a Dream speech. And it's almost prophetic in some ways to see this. And King says that we must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. We cannot walk alone. That almost is prophetic in that this is a struggle that will go on until the end of time. I guess the struggle has gone on since the beginning of time, that struggle for a higher plane of dignity and discipline.
And I would agree with you on that, Gina, that battle we must continue to fight. The one that I think exhausted in fighting, as I think many of us are, is the one that deals specifically with the dynamics within this American context, the created and constructed identity of race, right? That did not exist even 400 or 500 years ago in the same way. The understanding in a capitalist system, this hierarchical look at how some ought to be at the top, and it is okay to have the masses at the bottom struggling to find housing and struggling to have health care while we have billionaires and millionaires who get tax breaks consistently. I'm okay with the struggle theologically, as the three of us understand very well, of good and evil. What I am exhausted from is the struggle of race, class, and inequality, and how that manifests itself. And I think that, as I recognize, as even theologically, the Bible teaches us that the poor will always be with us. And so we know we'll never live in a utopia. I'm just at the place in America, I'm like, man, can we get a little less poverty? Can we get a little less racism? Can we get a little less violence in the country? That's where I want to get to.
I'm thinking in this moment that America as conceived and the wealth that we have been able to generate since the inception of the Republic, I'm not so sure that admonition in the Bible that the poor will be with us always is a reality. It is something that we choose to allow to happen because of our lack of concern for neighbor. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. NASA marked its annual Day of Remembrance by honoring astronauts who died in the pursuit of space exploration. At a ceremony, Black Kennedy Space Center Deputy Director Kelvin Manning remembered the crews of Apollo 1 and the space shuttles Challenger and Columbia.
May we teach the next generation their names.
Additional ceremonies were held at NASA facilities nationwide. A slavery exhibit in Philadelphia was removed from a historic site after the Trump administration labeled it disparaging. The National Park Service took down the President's House exhibit honoring enslaved people who lived and worked there. And Black civil rights pioneer Claudette Colvin will be laid to rest this week. Colvin, who was arrested in 1955 for refusing to give up her seat on a segregated Montgomery bus, died of natural causes earlier this month at the age of 86. Her actions helped pave the way for the end of bus segregation nationwide. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit PCADevZone.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers and Clippers generated a playoff atmosphere last night for a sellout crowd at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. After blowing a 22-point lead in the third quarter and a 14-point lead in the fourth, the Clippers kept their composure and held on for a 112-104 win. The Clippers are 14-3 since December 20th, the best record in the NBA during this 4-week stretch. After a 6-21 start, the Clippers are now 20-24, a game ahead of Memphis for the 10th and final playoff spot in the Western Conference. Kawhi Leonard, who missed the previous 3 games with a sore left knee, led the Clippers with 24 points. Luka Doncic had a game-high 32. LeBron finished with 23 points and 6 assists. This run the Clippers are on is something special. Last night's outcome made it official. There are now 2 NBA teams in LA to get excited about this season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Tired of the same old sports talk? Ready to go where the real conversation happens? Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, host of Out of Bounds, the sports show that doesn't play it safe. Every Friday at 6 p.m. on KBLA Talk 1580, my co-host Neil Scarborough and I get you ready for the weekend. We take you beyond the highlight reels and into the stories that matter, the controversial calls, the game-changing plays, the athletes making headlines for all the right reasons and sometimes the wrong ones. From the NFL to the NBA, college ball to the pros, if it's happening in sports, we're breaking it down with no filter and all opinion. Tune in to Out of Bounds with me, Ray Richardson, and my co-host Neil Scarborough, live every Friday at 6 p.m. only on KBLA Talk 1580, because the best conversations happen out of bounds. KBLA Talk 1580, where Los Angeles talks.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
They call it progress, but progress has a price. Land once held in black hands, taken, stolen, erased. Acres paved into highways, fields burned. Homes replaced by parking lots and broken promises. Every deed lost was a dream deferred. We talk about millionaires, but what about the millionaires that never were? The farmers whose soil was seized, The families who watched their inheritance disappear, the wealth that never had a chance to grow because its roots were ripped from the ground. They took the land, but never the legacy, because the soil remembers, and so do we. Every story matters. Our mission is to collect, preserve, and amplify these stories. If this is part of your family's history, visit blacklandlost.org/share your story and help bring us closer to justice.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Quality drops the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download the app.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We're closing out our King celebration and commemoration and reflection. We do have some final thoughts. Gina?
Hi, Jesse. Hi, Ted.
Hey.
What I thought when I was doing a little bit of research on this was very interesting to see that passage of the 13th Amendment part in the if you're watching. If you're listening, it says January 1865, Lincoln makes a deliberate plan to ensure passage of the 13th Amendment, a king cure for all the evils. Lincoln viewed the 13th Amendment as God's cure for America's sin with slavery. And then he says, I leave it to you to determine how it shall be done, but remember that I'm the president, clothed with immense power, and I expect you to procure these votes. He felt really strongly about it in a prophetic kind of way. Not that he himself was entrenched in any sort of spirituality. We don't find that about him, but certainly he feels that way about the ill of slavery, the mistreatment of people. And I find that King is pulling from him. And, hence he gives his very last speech at the feet of King in Washington at his statue.
I would also add to this about Lincoln, which I find to be partially problematic, is that the idea of the devil's in the details. So when Lincoln says, hey, I will leave this to you to determine how it shall be done, that is more than an ancillary comment. What Lincoln does by passing the 13th Amendment is still leave in this clause that has unfortunately terrorized the African American community since the 13th Amendment was passed, saying that slavery shall not exist except as a punishment for a crime. This was not an unimportant phrase. And we have seen post the passage of the 13th Amendment, we've seen countless institutional efforts, generational efforts, to use mass incarceration as a new form of slavery, as a new form of discrimination, as a new form of isolation. And to this day in 2026, still are wrestling with these questions when African-American males make up about 6% of the population, but make up about 60% of the people who are incarcerated in this country. We recognize very clearly that this was beyond imperfect in this way. And America, we have got to do we've got to have these conversations because we are still in many ways suffering. And I think that I just think it's critical that we do that. As I look at the legacy of Lincoln, when I was younger, I used to look at him as a true hero. I still think that he is heroic in what he accomplished for us. But I also recognize the severe limitations that we're wrestling with still today.
And that's why I believe King says that the struggle is our forever struggle must be nonviolent. And so it is a perpetual struggle, good versus evil, for the oppressor and the oppressed to fight, and nonviolently in this case.
I see, to both of your point, see that in the era of Lincoln, those Americans would have been deeply troubled, those who were on the abolitionist side of the equation, by Old Testament scripture, the Exodus story, the Moses story, as being essentially fatal to the idea of civilization. And that on the other side of the Moses story is this idea of a promised land, a new Israel, that the architects of our republic were at least trying to get to conceptually and certainly spiritually. I say that to say that Lincoln's challenge is a little different. Unlike any other form of slavery in the history of the world, we are the only people who've had to amend a constitution to get out of it, requiring the people themselves to assent to the idea that chattel slavery would be illegal going forward coming out of the Civil War. Now, does the 13th Amendment ban other forms of slavery, labor or wage slavery, or forms of discrimination that may present themselves in different form that one might consider to be as oppressive as some form of slavery, and slavery in the various forms that it has presented itself after the chattel system itself is destroyed by the 13th Amendment? And so one could argue that we are in some form of healthcare slavery, some form of education slavery, some form of environmental slavery, as long as the system that we live in remains separate and unequal and without the human right to be out of those systems, the legal right to be out of those systems, we still find ourselves trapped in the existing systems. Let me close on this. The structure of the Constitution under the Bill of Rights, and this, particularly the 10th Amendment, which became, of course, that amendment that the slaveholders themselves wrapped their legal theories around. If the right itself is not in the Constitution, the 10th Amendment says, then it is a right that belongs within the purview of the states. And so, of course, the slaveholders argued, since the word slavery is not in the Constitution, we have a right to do what we want down here in Georgia. We got a right to do what we want over here in Alabama. You can't tell us down here in Texas what we can do with our Negroes, or Tennessee. But once the Constitution is amendment, we now have a constitutional right, a human right, not to be born into a condition of slavery or of chattel servitude. So if that's the framework, states' rights, separate and unequal, and the idea of human right, a human right not to be in slavery, I'm of the opinion that we need more human rights added to the Constitution, and they have to be added in the form of amendments, because on one side of the 13th Amendment, we do know existentially there is a slave system. What we do know on this side of its addition to the Constitution, there's a 14th, 15th Amendment, and we're towards something. I'd like to see us separate health carelessness, let that be the past. Give everybody a future that is the right to health care. Let the idea that no citizen has the right to vote, it's controlled by the states. Let that be the system of the past. Let's build a superhighway from Maine all the way to California in our democracy, where everyone has a fundamental constitutional right to vote. Let's let inequality for women be the era of the past. Let's advance the Equal Rights Amendment and let the Constitution divide the old era, the slave era, of how we treated women with respect to their rights by empowering them with the constitutional right to an Equal Rights Amendment where everybody's on notice that if you think you can pay a woman or treat a woman differently in the system, she now has a legal right to object. And there are legal, civil, and potentially even criminal consequences for any form of subjugation on those questions. But the paradigm that's essentially set by Lincoln is that human rights are forever enshrined in the Constitution. We, the people, Ted, got to add them. We got to add them to the Constitution.
There you go.
I love it. And I think what you're saying is so timely because we are in the 250th anniversary of the nation. We ought to be having these conversations across the country, Jesse and Gina, to say, this was the past, this was the old. How will we go forward in the new? And what you are talking about, the issues that we're dealing with still 200 years, almost 200 years after this, and 400 years after our folks came to this nation, we're still dealing with these fundamental questions of what it means to be a human being, a citizen, an American. This ought to be a crossroads for this country to say we will not go forward the next 250 years without guaranteeing these rights.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In just a moment, we'll come forward with our final segment, and of course, from Reverend Dr. Ted Williams, a word of hope. More when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right.
Y'all gotta try that Febreze car.
Just right, just right, just right. Yeah. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency, all over Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face when it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah, breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
Not everything announces itself. Some things simply arrive, and the room is compelled to adjust. This is grooming without apology, without noise, without compromise. Gods and money, organic formulations, clean precision, crafted for skin that does not ask for permission to be felt. Element Cream, a rare hydration layered like an oud at dusk, measured, enduring, unmistakably masculine, moisturizing oil, a quiet revolution, restoring what stress, climate, and time attempts to claim. This is not skincare. It is composure made visible. It is inevitability. Gods and money exist impeccably. Discover the ritual at godsandmoney.com. That's Gods and Money, MONY.com.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project. Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail, and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do? what thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail, because freedom should be free.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
As a mom, comforting my family is what I do best. Vicks Vapor Stick provides soothing, non-medicated Vicks vapors in an easy-to-apply stick, and it dries fast, so there's no mess. I use it to comfort myself and my family.
Thanks, Mom.
Vicks Vapo Stick, soothing comfort for the whole family. And try Vicks Vapo Shower Max for steamy Vicks Vapors when you need more comfort for yourself. Use as directed.
Pizza's here. Oh, great. I'd love some, but I'm worried about my stomach issues.
If you're worried about having diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose, oily stools, it may not just be stomach issues. It could be a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and talk to your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Folly drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In this, our final segment of Fat Meat Fridays in the J Lunch Club. Gina Towns, our creator, is our regular contributor on Fridays, as well as our very special guest, Dr. Ted Williams III. Ted, Gina, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you for having us. It's always good to be here.
Gina had some insights that she wanted to share during the break that I thought she should bring forward now. Gina?
So Ted, and for our listeners, I can't wait till, if you're just listening, I can't wait for you to go and download this podcast so that you can see Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King's speeches side by side, the similar rhetoric and the structures that are used in these speeches. But, you know, part of what I was trying to get to was what Jesse talked about before we went to break. And that is from 1863 to 1963, we see Abraham Lincoln where he was in that portion of our history. And then you see King come forward in another era in human history. And so, you know, we're heading toward another space in our own human history where we see some of the same struggles that pop up. But one thing I have to say about this is the whole idea of the amendment process is what Jesse was discussing, that when we got to the 1960s, we enacted acts versus those amendments, whereas Lincoln was as sure could be that the 13th Amendment had to be passed. He knew that if he just did the Emancipation Proclamation, which is an act, that should he perish, that they could do away with the act. And that's what we see unfolding here. We see the unraveling of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 65. And so that we have to rest assured that the generations that we are teaching and pushing forward, they have to go and read this history. They have to read the Emancipation Proclamation, the Amendments 13, 14, and 15. They have to go and read the Voting Rights Act and understand why we can't just pass an act alone, because it is more easily undone. What it takes to pass a constitutional amendment for human rights for everyone, state by state, is an arduous task, but that's the work that is before us.
You know, I think that just to add a little clarity to what Gina was saying or is saying, the Emancipation Proclamation is probably more akin to a executive order. It's not an act of Congress. So by the time you advance the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, you know, it is 95 years from the 15th Amendment to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. 95 years to get Congress to act and actually make it real and dwell amongst the people. even with the 14th Amendment, you end up with a 14th Amendment interpretation in 1896, which basically instructs Congress that their interpretation of the Equal Protection Clause is separate but equal. And of course, a new interpretation in 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education, overturns the Plessy decision because separate but equal is inherently unequal, a new interpretation of the 14th Amendment that is largely responsible for laying the foundation for the Civil Rights Act, which led to the implementation by Congress of other acts, including Americans with disability, including the right to marry, including overcoming that Loving case in Virginia, marry who you want to marry, challenges to the Mann Act. That's what locked up the heavyweight champion of the world at the turn of the century, because he did not have those basic protections. So it seems to me that the pattern is, once we have a constitutional amendment, we have a civil rights movement that can commence immediately, or it can take 95 years to get to a civil rights movement. If you guaranteed every American the right to a public education of equal high quality, what's up next? The civil rights movement to reduce all class sizes across this country to less than 15 students, or individualized instruction. What's up next? The Equal Facilities Act, where if they have a swimming pool over there, everybody gets to train for the Olympics in all public schools everywhere in the country, because that's an Equal Facilities Act, a civil rights act. So if you amend the Constitution guaranteeing all Americans the right to health care of equal high quality, it means that the trauma units aren't on one side of town, while there are no trauma units on this side of town. And it gives people the legal right and the government the structure by which a civil rights can be passed, where we find health deserts. Hospitals can then be constructed at the will of the people. That's pretty much the structure of the system that we live in. Now, as difficult as that sounds, 2/3 of the Congress, 3/4 of the states, to actually get a new human right added to the Constitution. Imagine if we did not have a system in place, the founding, Ted, of the country itself to even amend our way out of our problems. If there were no United States government, there would be no legal process for even ending slavery. Some states by now might have gone on ahead and set up their own country. But because they agreed to union, and yes, we did fight a civil war, there is a way out. And I can't think of, with all of America's problems, Ted, a greater experiment than the one that we are living in. Ted, we have about 2 minutes before the end of the show. You might want to summarize everything for us and even offer, in that context, a word of hope.
Sure. Thank you. And I appreciate, Gina, your connection with the history, this arc, this desire for years and years, generations and generations to get to this notion of equality. You know, Brother Jesse, as you were talking, I was just thinking about this process, this constitutional amendment process. We've only really done it really 16 times outside of the Bill of Rights. And the last time was in 1991, the 26th Amendment. And I think about, here we are in 2026, looking at, though we have a process to make this happen, why is it so difficult to have change? That's the real question that we must ask ourselves today. And what do we need to be doing? And I think, to your point, it is not a state-by-state question. It is not an individual question, as many people like to simplify and make these issues. It is really a guarantee of rights from the federal perspective, so that we can go forward and have guarantees, not just proclamations, but guarantees in public policy that will last beyond a particular administration or generation. And that is the real question that we must be speaking to. And I pray in our lifetime, going forward, that we will see more amendments to this Constitution. I wish we could not have to go issue by issue, so that we could get these basic guarantees of human rights. I wish we could do it in a larger way, but it looks like history has shown us we may have to do that. And for that, I think there is a word of hope in that, my brother and sister, because
KBLA 15.
Those who fought in the past have done it. We can do it again.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest has been Reverend Dr. Ted Williams III. So grateful for his participation. And Gina, As always, thank you for creating the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Well, thank you for all you have to offer and the reason why you need to win.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.